It's so ridiculous. Hey, so someone suggested that I show you how the placement of two different eyeshadow colors in different areas really makes a huge difference for your eye shape. And I wanted to share that with you today because I thought it was a great idea. I'm just gonna throw down a little bit of eye primer. This is the Urban Decay Original Primer. So I want to show you how the different placements of like two shadows can really adjust like where your eye leads. And by yours, I mean like the person who's looking at you. We tend to follow the darker shades in kind of like whichever direction they're pointing. So I'm going to use the Viseart palette. This is the Neutral Matte palette by Viseart. Very expensive, but quite nice. So I'm going to be using this shade, this matte white shade. It's kind of like a vanilla white. And then I'm going to be using this shade right here. And I'm going to show you, so basically like my skin tone is somewhere in between these two shades. So I'm using something that's darker and something that's much lighter. So I have two very similar brushes that I'm going to be using right now. This is the Refer 13 brush and right here. And then this is the Wayne Goss 02 brush, which is, I think like the Wayne Goss brushes are just a slightly more expensive, just if you were looking for reference. So for this eye, I'm going to start off picking up that matte white or vanilla, wherever you want to call it, placing it in the inner corner of my eye on the lid. And I'm taking it about halfway on the lid. That's already like makes a huge difference, right? Now, using my other brush, I'm going to pick up that darker shade and I'm going to buff that on the outer part of the eye. So I'm going to start on the outer part of the lid, buffing it into my crease, but I'm going to make sure that I'm focusing it in kind of like a V shape. So this is probably like a pretty classic makeup look that you've seen before, where it's nice and light on the inner part of the eye, and then on the outer part, you have this like nice smoky kind of definition going into the crease, hugging the eye socket, and then maybe just like blending out a little bit to give a little bit of a lift to the eye. But essentially, you've got light on the inner part, dark on the outer part. Now, I want to show you what happens when you do the opposite. So I'm starting off with that dark shade, and I'm going to place it in the inner corner. So doing the exact same thing, focusing on the inner part of the lid, and then slowly buffing. I feel like it's already probably pretty obvious, but now I'm going to go in with that matte white shade. Place it out here. So we're doing the complete opposite. I'm going to buff that white into the crease. Okay. Like I said, our eye, the viewer's eye, tends to follow the dark shade in the direction that it's going. So what you can see is that on this side of my face, the light shade is kind of like opening up this area, right? And then our eye is kind of following this dark shade, which is kind of like going this direction. So we're defining this part of my eye crease, which is like pretty typical of like most eye shapes. It's like essentially what we're trying, like Cillian Murphy, okay? Let's take him as an example. Has the most beautiful eye sockets I've ever seen in my entire life. Essentially, when our basic placement for eyeshadow, we're sort of following that placement. We're sort of like trying to define the eye socket, so around our eyeball, so that our, like the top of our eye doesn't look super duper heavy, right? So that's what we're doing here. And then placing the dark on the outer part is kind of like bringing our eye out here. It's sort of like lifting, maybe drawing the eye out. Okay, on this side, now that you can compare, placing that dark shade on the inner part of the lid is drawing the eye inward, and it's doing the opposite over here. So this dark shade is drawing the eye inward, which is making my eyes look like they're closer together, even more close set. And like this area is going back in space, like it's really deep set, which would be even worse if we like darkened this area, right? Now the light out here, rather than like defining that eye socket, is making this part of my eye hang so low. Do you see how it's doing that? It's like a completely different shape. Like this area looks like it's like nice and up and lifted and defined, and this area is just like coming down. It's dragging this whole part of my eye down. Like you can't even see the lid, you know? It's So crazy. So what's interesting is that like this is kind of like going, it's down and it's pushing in, whereas this is sort of like lifting up and pushing out. All right, now I want to show you two other placements. So now for this eye, I'm going to pick up that matte white and I'm going to place it all over the lid from the inner all the way to the outer corner. Just stopping basically at the eye socket. All right, and now I'm going to take that dark brown and I'm going to place that just above. So in the eye socket, focusing it above that from the inner to outer. And then I'm going to slowly blend it up all the way to the bottom of my brow. God, these are nice shadows. They're expensive, but they're nice, dude. They blend well. So just diffusing all the way up to my brow bone. Again, probably a look that you've seen before. Okay, so dark, light. Now, I'm gonna do the opposite. It's gonna be crazy. Dark brown all over the lid, stopping at that crease. Wait, did I prime? I forgot to prime this time, fuck. Whatever. Now, I'm gonna go in with that matte white. Same way, starting in the crease. Forgot to prime my eyelids this time, so if it's like super patchy, apologies. Starting in that crease all the way from the inner to the outer, building that white up. It's so crazy. Building that white up and then buffing, diffusing to my brow. You guys, it's so ridiculous. I can't. Okay, whoever suggested this was such a good idea. It's like such a perfect way of like showing why we put certain colors where. All right, so once again, you can obviously see that like where that dark shade is, our eye is following it. So for this side, you have that nice light shade on the lid that's just like opening up the eye. We're basically enhancing like what the actual shape of the eye is. So like obviously our lid is going to come forward more, where our like crease is going to go back more. So that's why you're placing that contour shade, that dark shade in that crease. It's going to push it back. Which also helps to like kind of open up the eyes more, right? It pushes this area back in space so it doesn't look so heavy. It's the complete opposite on this side. We're like closing off this lid completely. We're pushing it back in space. Making this area light like that is once again making this whole, I mean, look at that. It's like making this whole area look like it's just like folded over. I look so much older than I am. It's just like completely unflattering, right? So that dark shade is really pulling your eye in that direction. It's pulling it in, right? And that light shade, because it's like meant to be a highlight, it's like where the light is hitting, it's coming forward more. It's making it so much more prominent. It's insane. Look at it. It's just like, holy shit. You know? Ooh, nice and lifted and beautiful. It's insane what a difference it makes. All right, I'm having a hard time taking myself seriously looking like this, but I hope this was helpful because it's a really great visual for why you put lights and darks where you put them. I've talked about this a lot with like contouring your face, and I've tried to touch on it with contouring your eyes because that's essentially what eyeshadow is. We just like use colors sometimes. But you have to think about it in terms of the lights and darks, and it really does make a huge difference. So if you've been doing any of the things that I did over here on my left eye, you might want to keep that in mind. Let me know if there are any other placements that you want me to compare, but I feel like these were probably some of the best. And once again, thank you to whoever suggested this because it was a great idea. All right, guys, let me know what you want to see next. I'm going to take this off because I look crazy. Bye.